these aren't the only 5 by any means, right? Happy 5 Fact Friday. 5 Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Lambden, and it is 5 Fact Friday. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another 5 Fact Friday. It's Friday the 26th of November, 2025. This is the Moving Home with Charlie channel. And I was about to make a claim that I haven't substantiated yet, so I can't, because this is 5 Fact Friday, so it can't be 5 Guess Friday. And I'm Charlie Lambden, and a special welcome to all new followers of the channel. It's exciting to see more and more people joining every single week. If you are watching this live right now and you are a recipient of the 5 Fact Friday newsletter, that will have just dropped in your inbox a few seconds ago. And today, let's go. I don't know why I'm laughing. I tell you why I'm laughing. There's something I've forgotten to do to prepare for this, and I can't think what it is. There's something I've forgotten. There's something I've missed. But for those of you who don't want to listen to me ramble for however long I'm going to ramble about the 5 or 6 facts actually this Friday, let me run through the headlines for you very quickly. So this is the first one. With the very industry that provided the debt. I'll go into the details in a minute. So the boss of the building society that owns Connell's estate agents has come to this conclusion. Now, he's a recent boss, so he's not culpable for all the things that Connell's have done. Because he's the Skipton, the owner's boss, the owner of Connell's. But it is ironic, nevertheless, that this person in this position will be making this point, and I will come on to that in a minute. And it's not news. This isn't news. What's news is that the person in this job is saying it because of an irony that those of you who read my newsletter this morning will find out. That's fact number 1. I'm already rambling. Fact number 2. It's been all over the news this week about Jaguar Land Rover factories being shut down. That is incredibly worrying. There's a chink of good news, of light at the end of the tunnel perhaps, but Jaguar Land Rover employs 137,000 people in the manufacturing process, including people in its supply chain. But before their shutdown, which was allegedly due to a cyber attack, okay, maybe, we haven't been shown the proof of that, but we're expected to believe it, but okay, maybe. Before that, car sales have been in absolute freefall. And in August, the sales of cars and vans together were the lowest since 1956. Either the sales or the manufacturer, I'm not quite sure, but one of them. So my point being, this is a very strong signal about the economy. Fact number 3. Bond buyers, the investors who lend UK government money, are losing confidence in the government, and this creates more problems for Reeves even before the budget. I'll get into that when we get to it. Kirsty Allsop put a story out on the Telegraph yesterday saying that the property market is dead. And again, whilst that might not be factual news from the last 7 days, it is interesting that someone as trusted and as widely known as Kirsty is being quoted in the Telegraph as saying this, because that will have an impact. The next fact, number 5, is that we may have a new Labour leadership challenge from Andy Burnham. That in itself is interesting, significant politically, but in the headline, this would make me go yes, right? In the headline of the manifesto that he was talking about to the Telegraph newspaper, he says he wants to borrow £40 billion to build council houses. Someone's listening. Someone's listening. So that would be, that would be, politically speaking, the best news I've heard in a very long time. Not that I'm a supporter of Andy Burnham, not that I'm a supporter of his other policies, but if you fix housing, you fix everything. And the only thing that fixes housing is a massive council house building spree. And this is the first, still not big enough number, but it's the first number starting to get into the realms where it needs to be to build enough council houses to take the pressure off the private sector of renter sector and building sector and allow prices to settle back to normal levels and allow more people to afford homes. That's fact number 5. And fact number 6, there's a just delicious article in the Telegraph. And, I'm not one to indulge in Schadenfreude, and I do not celebrate any seller's failure to sell their house. But the Telegraph has done an amazing job in this article of highlighting the yawning gap between sellers and agents' expectations on the one hand and reality on the other. It's just delicious. Some of the quotes are beautiful. I look forward to that. Who do we have following us this morning? Oh, frustrated home buyer. That's a new one. Good morning, Charlie, from a very misty Welsh Shropshire border. Good morning. Purple Howl. Good morning. The English Voice. Good morning. Baldrick's Turnip High. Pedro Santos. Jill Hayes. D. Griffo. Ligma Arf. You almost got me. Haven't seen you here for a while. Welcome back. Patricia, Jacek D, and Jason. Hi there. Okay. Let's get into it in a bit more detail. So this first story here, I'll make it big on the screen. So it's less about me and more about the story. This is a really interesting article. By the way, for anyone that's new, if you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook, the links to all of these articles are linked to below. If you're watching this on X, there's a post that just came out at the same time as this video, but it's not yet linked to the same post with a link to all these articles. If you're watching on TikTok, welcome. I'm now live streaming simultaneously on TikTok, which I haven't done before. You need to, you got to go find the links elsewhere, and the same on Instagram. And I recommend that you look at these stories if the subject is of interest to you. Now, this really is, for me, the biggest story of the week, because it highlights the blind spot in the industry that is contributing enormously to the lack of affordability. And this, I'm not going to read the whole article, but I recommend you guys do. So here's the headline, right? Generation locked out of home ownership in the UK housing crisis. Well, not according to some people. According to my counterpart on that interview this week on Wednesday on the podcast with Kezia Noble, no, there's no affordability crisis. But I've got a policy decision now. I will no longer debate planks. You can't debate with stupid people because they don't understand how to absorb fact. Anyway, never mind. There is an affordability crisis, and the owner of a big mortgage lender, which is also the owner of the country's largest estate agency, is saying that the affordability crisis is locking a generation out of the market. Now, anybody with parents, with children, doesn't want their children to be locked out of home ownership, okay? The research created by Skipton Building Society in partnership with Oxford Economics finds 98% of adults living with their parents cannot afford to buy a house in their local area. The 5 million people in this position, imagine the buying activity that would be unlocked if prices came down. Imagine the social mobility. Imagine the economic activity if these 5 million people, or even just half of them, could actually afford to buy their own home, like 20-year-olds back in the 1960s could. I was talking to Stig about this. They've been trapped by a faulty system. Now, he says it's a faulty system. Yes, okay. Looking at the index was one of these stark moments where you realize that a generation has been locked out of home ownership and are being trapped at home. It's very jarring. And of course, that will contribute to falling birth rates and that kind of stuff. The social and economic consequences of this are quite material, he adds in a massive understatement. Well, this to me is fantastically good news that the owner of the boss of a mortgage lender that owns the country's biggest estate agency is beginning to come to terms with this reality because it might make them rethink their overpricing, overvaluing, ridiculous strategy that makes this problem worse. However, overvaluing is a symptom of this problem. It's not the cause of this problem, but it does make it worse. It goes on, it goes on, it goes on. It's worth a read, that article. But that's fact number one. Fact number, sorry, and there's a fact number 1B, because I just discovered this morning. This is also on City AM, right, which is a website for people working in financial markets, but it has a lot of good stuff in there. Yesterday, the UK economy stalls with 50,000 job losses ahead of the autumn budget. Not that they're bothered. They're not bothered. They're never bothered by these things. It's all fine as far as they're concerned. But the UK economy was hit with a litany of worrying news in the 3 months to September, with thousands of jobs lost ahead of the autumn budget. The latest flash PMI, Purchasing Managers Index from S&P Global, showed business activity expectations for the year ahead slumped to a 3-month low as firms braced for a painful autumn budget. Around 50,000 job losses were signalled in the 3 months to September. Okay. And then manufacturing takes a sharp downturn. All of this is relevant to people trying to work out where the economy is going and how that might affect the housing market. All right. This did not get widely reported. This did not get widely reported in mainstream news yesterday, as far as I could see, because there was so much coverage about digital IDs. Don't want to get started on that. So that's a bonus fact, actually. That makes it number 7. But here we are. Fact number 2 is the UK car production slumps even before Jaguar Land Rover shut down. Now, anyone who's interested in the car industry and has been following it closely will have been seeing car sales have been sliding for a while. The classic car market has completely collapsed. Secondhand car dealerships, even with YouTube channels, have been shutting down and closing down. And this, again, is another very, very loud recession signal. Now, these kind of things normally happen after the government has admitted, yes, we're in recession. This government is going to the most extraordinary lengths to paper over the cracks and make everything look fine. Well, it's not great. We want to do better. There's always more work to do. But basically, we're okay. We're not in recession. We are. As someone who has living memory of 3 previous recessions, I don't care what the figures say. This country is in recession. My opinion only. I know it's Fact Friday, and that's only an opinion, but there we are. And this kind of stuff is what happens, right? Car production slumps, car sales are slumping, even before the Jaguar Land Rover shut down. And I really worry, despite the bit of good news I'm about to share with you, I really, really worry about this, because this would be a seismic event if the Jaguar Land Rover production facility shuts down. Now, Jaguar Land Rover is owned by Tata Motors, an Indian company. They've had lots of taxpayer bailouts in the past. It wouldn't surprise me if they've got another one now. The government has been talking about ideas like buying up parts from suppliers. Obviously, the government does not want this to happen, because it would be a real shockwave to the entire country's economy if this particular production facility was to close down. And I deeply, fervently hope it doesn't. Not least because I've been a lifelong fan of Land Rovers. I grew up on a farm. Learned to drive on my mum's lap when I was 8 years old around a field, right? That's how lucky I was. I love Land Rovers. I love Land Rovers, like blindly. I'm blinded to their faults. So a genuinely, deeply personal tie to the Land Rover brand that would make me very, very sad if anything happened to it. Which makes me happy to bring about this piece of news, which is that on the website Pistonheads, good news, JLR begins restart of digital estate. Its factories remain closed, but JLR can at last begin to clear its backlog of supply chain payments. Right? I won't go into any more detail than that right now. It's starting to get into a bit of a wormhole. But that is welcome news, and I hope it's the beginning of a lot more good news. But I'm still holding my breath a bit about Land Rover. I'm worried about it. Okay, on to the next fact. So that was fact number 3. Fact number 4. Okay, the UK budget angst hits gilt sales as investor appetite fades. This came out yesterday, this story. When the very bond buyers, who are the investors who lend the UK government money every single month, are losing confidence in the government. And this is a real problem. This creates more problems for Reeves even before the budget, because what this does is it makes it more and more expensive for the government to borrow money. And because the government has said that it's going to stick within its fiscal rules, if borrowing costs go up, the interest goes up, and that interest increasing reduces the government's budget for paying for public services. And therefore, it forces yet more upwards pressure on taxes and downward pressure on public services. And is bad for the economy as a whole, as more money of the government's budget from the Treasury gets sucked out of the budget for paying public services to go and pay the investors more interest, because they're losing faith in the British government's ability to run the business. Now, we'll come back to this in a moment when we're talking about Andy Burnham, because there are some interesting comments being made about that. But this again is worrying, bad news for the government, for the economy. And we already have gilt yields at like almost 30-year highs at the moment. So none of this is good news for the Chancellor really running up to the budget. Okay. Kirsty's story. The property market is dead. That's quite a punchy headline. The property market is not dead. Certain parts of it are. Okay, the London flat market is nearly dead. New build home sales in London are dead, as we covered last week. But there are still tens of thousands of people actually moving house every month across the country. Okay. And what's interesting about this story is not the fact that the property market is dead, but the fact that the Telegraph is doing a story and that Kirsty Allsop is coming out and saying that, because that will impact the market. Okay. A household name, a trusted face, a trusted voice in a mainstream paper saying that is not going to help the confidence of worried buyers already. But it also, what it should do, hopefully, is make sellers take more seriously how worried buyers are, and therefore, hopefully, cut their prices sooner to meet the market wherever they are. Okay, that's that story. Now, this one I think is actually potentially one of the most interesting stories of the week. Excuse me. So anyone who's heard the news will have heard the story yesterday about Andy Burnham wanting to challenge Starmer. MPs want me to challenge Starmer. That's what he says. Oh, it's not me. He said that the backbench Labour MPs are asking me to. They're asking me to. Okay, cool, fine. But he sets out his manifesto. We're just about to start the Labour Party conference. Could be interesting. So the clearest hint yet that he's considering returning to Westminster. But this is the bit that caught my eye. In an interview with the Telegraph, Mr. Burnham set out a broad manifesto of policies he said would turn the country around, including higher council tax on expensive homes. So every single piece of news that affects expensive homes that's coming out this week is getting worse and worse and worse. £40 billion of borrowing to build council houses and income tax cuts for lower earners, as well as a 50p rate for the highest paid. Okay, this is interesting. for a number of reasons. I don't know much about Andy Burnham. Okay, I know he's the mayor of Greater Manchester. I know he's got a big following, a lot of fans. I am not. I am, as I have been my whole life. I am politically neutral. I'm not economically neutral. I'm definitely economically right wing, but politically I'm neutral. Socially, social politics, I'm actually very neutral. That might surprise people, but you've got to separate these things out, right? There's political, there's social, there's economic. I am neutral politically and socially. I am slightly right wing when it comes to economics because capitalism, with all of its flaws, lifts people out of poverty better than any other system, right? Doesn't mean that it hasn't got massive problems. Doesn't mean that some of the flaws in capitalism cause poverty. They do, some of them. Inequality is a bad problem, but still, it's the least bad. And that's why I'm slightly right of center when it comes to economics. But on politics and socials, I am very neutral. This is interesting to me. This is one of the most interesting pieces of news, I think, for the housing market for a long time. First of all, if the Labour backbenchers decide to bring a leadership contest now, I think a lot of people would cheer that across the political spectrum, because all the polls indicate that there's never been a less popular prime minister than Keir Starmer. He's not only unpopular with everyone that didn't vote for him, he's popular with about 80% of the people who did vote with him, right? There are Labour supporters who cannot stand Keir Starmer. And what Starmer and Reeves are doing to the economy, which was already bad, and you could absolutely lay the blame for most of the problem at but previous Tory and previous Labour governments, but these guys are stepping on the head of a drowning economy, with whether it's with sheer incompetence or malice is a topic for debate, right? But Andy Burnham is a very, very different proposition socially, economically, and politically than Keir Starmer. And a lot of people would welcome a mid-term leadership challenge, despite how disruptive it was when it happened to the Tories. I think, on balance, by far the majority of the people in this country would love to see Labour tear themselves apart and have anyone other than Keir Starmer in charge. So that political upheaval would impact the housing market. It would impact the economy. It would definitely cause uncertainty, chaos, a bond market uncertainty. All kinds of things would happen if we are about to face a Labour leadership contest. I personally would cheer a Labour leadership contest. I cannot imagine a worse prime minister than Keir Starmer. So for that reason alone, I would cheer Andy Burnham being elected leader of the Labour Party. Right? For that reason, not because I support his politics, not because I know anything about him, just because he's not Keir Starmer. And it's the only opportunity that we have to have a different prime minister to Keir Starmer before the next election. That would be a silver lining in the cloud of the government that we're stuck with for now. Having said that, I always think that if you end up with an unelected prime minister, you need to have a general election pretty quickly, really quite quickly, because that prime minister, as Theresa May didn't, as Gordon Brown didn't have mandates. And you cannot govern without a mandate. But more importantly than that, if Mr. Burnham ended up as prime minister and did decide to go and borrow specifically to build social homes, that would be the single biggest, most powerful step I've seen taken in decades towards solving the housing crisis. And I won't go into the reasons now why it does. I've covered it many, many times before. But basically, in a nutshell, if the government builds council housing that it owns enough to meet its own housing obligations, then the demand from the government on private rented reduces and rents would come down. Yields would come down on properties for landlords, which would bring prices down too. It wouldn't have a very big effect on prices, but it would still have a negative effect on house values, and gradually would improve affordability, not least because it would be gradual, not least because if this happens, if they borrow 40 billion quid to build council housing, it won't make an instant difference overnight. It'll take quite a while before it starts to come through. But it will also provide some uplift in economic activity. And that would be very good. I can hear Stiggy, my ear, going, but Charlie, you didn't listen to me. There are no builders. They might get the money, but they still can't build them. And they've still got all the problems of planning. I know. I'm not saying it's any kind of instant solution, but it is nevertheless one of the best signs I've seen for a long time from any politician. Right. And the final, this is the story on the Telegraph. I think I've got done eight facts this week, but these are all relevant, right? This one's relevant because it's another wake-up call for sellers. I know. It's talking about the market for £3 million plus properties grinding to a halt. And it's certainly true that market has ground to a halt. I heard in person to my face yesterday someone telling me that someone from a very well-known agency who is said, we are now overvaluing everything and we're selling nothing because we have to overvalue everything because we have to win the instructions off the other agents. I cannot say who it was. I wish I could. This is firsthand. I mean, it doesn't surprise me because that's clearly what is happening. That agents, even though they actually speak with their own mouth, that it is killing their pipelines, killing their incomes, killing their businesses. And that I also know that particular business is having layoffs. In a business that's having layoffs, that if the public knew about or the industry knew about would be like big news, is also saying, but we're overvaluing because you've got to. I mean, it's literally like continuing to dig their own grave. I struggle to understand that level of stupidity at that level of seniority in a business of that profile. Anyway, and there's some beautiful evidence in here of this. So let's just get past all the. So when the family made the collector's decision to sell in September 2023, so 2 years ago, right? It's been on the market 2 years. Because his mother is a widow and wants to downsize. Savills, who are arguably the worst when it comes to overvaluing country houses, as far as I can tell. They produced plenty of buying agents to arrange an off-market deal, but after no viewings and no takers, the mill went on the open market the following spring for £3 million. After 18 months. Who waits 18 months? Only people who think that the market's going up. Sorry, not funny. After 18 months, 8 viewings, a silly offer, and another fairer offer that they accepted before the buyer dropped out the day before exchange. That's really, really horrible to happen. They switched to a local agent, John Nash, in June. Well, that's good, but they should have done that a lot sooner than 18 months. Okay, so since June, they've had 3 viewings, but no bids. This is the sentence I can't believe. Telford and the family agree that the property is priced correctly. Oh, well, if you agree, then you must be right. I mean, do you agree? Do you agree? Well, we agree. So it must be priced correctly. I mean, that paragraph summarizes better the problem with the whole property market than anything else. 2 years, hardly any viewings, no offers in their most recent with it. But the property is priced correctly. No, we have no doubts. Your property is priced correctly if you end up getting bids at that price. That is a mathematically true statement of fact. And I know there are going to be I know there are going to be people watching this game, but well, we know what our property is worth. No, you don't. Nobody knows what someone else is going to pay, and that is what worth means. I cannot. I just. I feel like I need a hammer and chisel to get this into the heads of sellers and agents. Oh no, it's priced correctly. They're just no buyers. It's priced correctly. It's not everything. Even in a downturn, even in a recession, everything's. I saw a property myself firsthand come onto the market for an auction, and it had hundreds of bidders. Sorry, hundreds of watchers, tens of bidders, and it went for. I was astonished at the price it went for. If you actually bring your property to the market will buy your property. If you've got no offers, you are priced too high. There are no exceptions. I'm going to keep going because I just want to keep on going with a hammer and chisel through the concrete delusion of agents and sellers alike. The family thought the mill would be snapped up. Obviously, they thought that because they thought they priced it correctly. Over the years, they've had envelopes through the letterbox asking for first refusal if they ever sold. Well, that doesn't mean you can just name your price. But the market has conspired against them, with buyers now willing to pay much less than sellers expect. Well, what buyers are willing to pay is the value of your home. What buyers are willing to pay is the value of your home. And if buyers are willing to pay much less than sellers expect, then sellers are expecting too much. Along with many others, that's an understatement, they are now at an impasse. Yep, along with the 700,000 other properties on the market not selling, they are at an impasse. I've got to show you the numbers on this because I need to do everything I can to just help people understand the cold hard mathematical truth of this. The non-funny side to this is that there are people who need and want to sell. I've had people on this channel saying, but we can't sell if our house isn't worth what we thought. And that's never funny. That's never nice. And this is why I've been saying for so many years now, if you buy, don't overpay because you then might not be able to sell. And it's horrible. Like it's life ruiningly horrible if you need and want to move and you can't because the market for your property is not there anymore. I am not laughing at the misfortune of any of the sellers that now can't move. I am laughing at these statements of delusion. Right. Activity at the top of the market is stalled and sellers are now being forced to slash their prices in the hope of attracting a buyer. Why aren't properties selling? Economic uncertainty is one explanation. Yes, it's a factor. Reports of proposal to change the property tax system are having a great effect. Until a budget clarifies the position and buyers see materially cheap borrowing, transactions are likely to remain suppressed. Yes, that's true. That's definitely a factor. And yeah, people are choosing to buy their time and wait out uncertainty, but everyone will still buy if the price is right. No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. So this is a property finder, so a buying agent, Ed Jeffson, says that bricks and mortar were always considered a rock solid asset, but as he says, whilst it's currently out of favor, that's one way of putting it, it's not. It's no longer a safe haven, right? Whilst it's currently out of favor, this trend is likely to change during a significant stock market downturn or crash, and buyers will be reminded that bricks and mortar still serve as a safe haven for wealth. No, Ed, you're wrong. That ship has sailed. That was true for the last 40 years until about 3 years ago. It was true. It's no longer true. And I think this misnomer is at the root of the industry's lack of ability to understand what's happening to property prices, right? It is no longer a safe haven for wealth. Why? Because house prices are not keeping up with wage growth. So they're effectively, values are falling, number one. Number two, maintenance costs are basically double what they were even just 5 years ago. Number three, energy and heating costs are much higher, and larger properties are now becoming much less attractive because of the running costs for them, making them lower in value. And number four, if you look medium to long term, the demographic change means that the market for big properties is going to be falling and falling and falling for some considerable time yet. We're at a 10-year high level of supply. I'm not going to do the average days on market. That's not helpful. So here's another one. Sellers forced to compromise. Margaret Melrose also feels her life has been put on hold by the stagnant housing market. It's not a stagnant housing market. It's just that the prices have dropped. She and her husband retired in their 70s and want to move, but feel imprisoned in their house. They are imprisoned by their refusal to accept the reality of what's happened to the market. Right? They're imprisoned by their expectations, not by the market. That house will sell. It's lovely, right? That house will sell, but just nowhere near the price that they think they can get. Grade 2 listed timber frame cottage with 4 bedrooms. It's a cottage. It's a 4-bedroom cottage. Okay, 3-bedroom annex in the former pool house. They paid $1 million for it in 2008. Spent $800,000 on it. Right? Made it up to the minute sustainable, but has a ground source heat pump, solar panels, out of sight. And they have their hearts set on a £1.6 million property to be near their daughter. This is a very, very common story, right? So they spent 1.8 on it. It's been on the market for offers in the region of 4 million, valued by Aspen estate agents, and in line with the prices of other properties in the area. I don't believe that. There have been 8 viewings and no offers. I thought it would go like a hotcake. And here we get into the agents again. I'm not singling out this agent. There are most agents are doing this. Celia Markham of Aspen Agents stands by the valuation. How can you do that? How? So to those of you who say agents don't drop prices and won't drop prices, this is like, I don't understand. You cannot say that you understand how the housing market works and say this. So this is where an agent's concern for their own credibility is ranking more highly to them than their actual income, than their ability to actually sell a house. And if you've got an agent, if your agent says, we stand by our valuation, but we've got you no viewings or offers, you need to fire that agent. They don't understand their job and they don't understand the housing market. Well, how's that possible, you say? How's that possible, Charlie? How can an agent be in business if they don't understand the housing market? Well, because for the last 15 years or until 2022, the market was so overheated by very low interest rates, money printing, etc., mortgage lending, you name it, that you didn't need to have a brain cell to open up an estate agency, put a property in the market, and buyers would just have to fight over it, right? But now that that's no longer the case, agents who've only ever experienced that market don't understand what's happening in this market. They don't understand it. I want to drill into this. We stand by our valuation. However, we're prepared to make reasonable reductions to the sale price, although for now they're happy to sit tight. Now, you see, if that's the agent saying that, well, it's not the agent's decision, it's the seller's decision. A lot of sellers get this wrong and they just do whatever their agent tells them. No, other way around. Your agent is instructed by you to do what you want. They don't decide, you decide. And if you want to lower your price, you say to your agent in an email, please lower the price from this to that, or lower the price to whatever is necessary to get me multiple viewings. That is the phrase that I would send my agent in this situation. I no longer want to wait while the market falls away. I don't believe the market's coming back. I want to sell because the longer we wait, the worse it's going to get. I want to lower the asking price to whatever necessary to get multiple viewings. I can't believe how many sellers are in the hands of agents this incompetent. And I'm sorry to pick out this particular agent, but to stand by the valuation on a house that isn't selling is the definition of an agent that doesn't understand their job or the market. So the same agent recently looked at properties listed within 3 miles and found that in the £3 to £4 million bracket, only 43 were listed, and 35% of those had been price been reduced. Now, that is not how you price a property to sell it. Because if you price your property at the higher end, which is what they've done, £4 million, of that price bracket, of other properties that also aren't selling, what did you think was going to happen? You cannot price your property at the same price as other properties that aren't selling and think that yours is going to sell when they aren't. Oh, but ours is nicer. You don't know that the buyer's going to think that. You might think it's nicer. The agent might tell you it's nicer. They tell you what you want to hear. Right? I would have priced that property if there were similar properties within 3 miles. I would have priced it at 2.75. They're so far out, they don't understand it. So the buying agent, Jeffson, says that when buyer caution doesn't match seller expectation, it's nearly always the seller who needs to compromise, says Jeffson. He would say that as his buying agent, but sadly, it's as simple as that. That is true. It's difficult for sellers to reconcile with reducing prices. The sellers motivated enough to sell who are prepared to drop their prices are the ones with their noses in front in the race to sell the house. My friend Emma, hi Emma, nice to see you being quoted in the Telegraph. Emma Files of London Property. Emma's been on this channel a few times, not for a long time. Need to get back. There are still buyers out there, but the market has shifted. There are always buyers out there. They're not paying the same prices that they were previously, and sellers can't face this new reality. The interesting choice of words, can't face. You're right. A lot of them can't face this reality. It's not that they won't, it's that they can't. In other words, the new reality means that the retirement they were expecting they can no longer have, right? A lot of people, this is a tragedy. A lot of sellers in this position at the higher end of the market are thinking, we can sell our house, cash in and get the equity, buy another smaller house for cash and live off the difference, and are finding out, no, you can't. you're either going to have to compromise on what you're downsizing to, or on your lifestyle, or both. That, when you've had a life working hard, you've been successful, you bought a house, you've invested in it, that is a horrific and brutal reality to be faced with. And I take no joy in making this point. But the reason you must come to terms with this reality is because if you don't, it's only going to get worse. This is why I share this economic news. Look at what's happened in the car industry. Look at what's happened to Jaguar Land Rover. Look at what's happening to jobs. Now tell yourself how you think, oh, if we wait, spring market will come back. If you, any seller with that mentality, right? Maybe we just need to wait. We've missed, there's no autumn market, but that's because of Rachel Reeves and the budget. Just need to wait. In the spring, it'll come back. Any seller who does that is making a huge mistake. Because all the economic signals, which is why I share them on this channel so much, are telling you that the economy is going to be getting worse, not better, in the foreseeable future. Emma goes on to say that owners and agents must agree on bullish, realistic, and worst-case scenario prices from day one. Right? Owners and agents must agree on the worst-case scenario price from day one. That is a golden piece of advice. It's sensitive, but when you have a good rapport, you should be able to have that conversation. I'm a big believer in tough love. Okay. Right. We have another one. And this is this article really, if anyone selling reads this article and continues under the delusion that they haven't got to massively rethink their price, then they're beyond help, and the future's going to be even bleaker. Property owner and would-be seller Mick Ryan has said that property owner Mick Ryan has had that very conversation and still says that every property we know in the £3 to £4 million bracket is stuck. Okay, it's not stuck, it's overpriced. And that includes his own 6-bedroom house in Bowden, south of Altrincham, Greater Manchester. It sits in 1 acre, has a pool, hot tub, and even a hobbit house in the grounds, which look over the valley to Cheshire. And there it is. And here we go, Savills. I keep on seeing examples of rampant overvaluing. I mean, this is the kind of behavior you expect from Dexter's or Foxtons, not from Savills. Savills are supposed to be the ones who are credible and professional. This is outright desperation by Savills and any other agent like them doing the same thing. They all are, but I just keep seeing anecdotal examples of Savills above all the others overvaluing. Which, by the way, Savills are also the ones who had the most optimistic house price growth forecast for 2025 at 4%, and they had to slash it to 1%. Everyone else was saying 2%. Savills went, no, 4%. They need to have a serious rethink. Savills originally valued the property at 4.5 million, which Ryan rejected because he has a background as a surveyor and architect himself, and listed it with another agent for 3.5 million. So that you can see how some sellers think that they're being really realistic, right? Well, Savills is valued at 4.5 million, but that's so crazy. So we've gone at 3.5 million because we're really realistic. But as of this May, he's with his third agency, Jackson Stops, now for 3 million. May, 6 months ago. And he's been on at 3 million for 6 months, chasing the market down. This situation is all too familiar to another buying agent, Nigel Bishop. The budget's caused a hiatus. In recent weeks, he's seen property valued at 3.25 million, where the agent advised to owners, if you're brave enough to go down to 2.5, that may do something. So a property valued at 3.25 million, bravo to the sellers for going down to 2.25 million, yet to have a viewing. you see, I've heard agents saying things like, "Oh yeah, but this is just in the super pro. This is just the very, very top of the market." All of these people want to downsize. Okay, and they're doing this, going into the downsizing, thinking they had a budget, and all of their downsizing budgets are going to be smaller than they thought. So their budgets for downsizing are going to be lower. That has a ripple effect going down the market. Okay, now, yes, where downsizers are competing with upsizers, you are getting a squeezed middle where house prices are holding up a bit better. That's true. But overall, this is a negative pressure on the housing market as a whole. Bishop's view is that while the market for properties below £1 million is still seeing activity spurred by life necessities such as relocating for a job or upsizing for children, the top of the market is largely immune from these pressures. You get to the £3 to £5 million mark, and the economy for those people is a different discussion altogether. Yeah, it's true, because a lot of people in that market are leveraged. Oh no, this is terrible advice. They have a different stance. Okay, his advice is to sit tight until after the budget, probably until the spring, when there will likely be a bigger pool of activity. That is incredibly dangerous advice to people in the £3 to £5 million market. And he's got no basis for that. Whilst there might be some more activity after the budget, that does not mean they're going to get the price they're holding out for. And I would argue the exact opposite if you need and want to sell to downsize. Because if you do this, along with everyone else that does it, what's going to happen? You're going to have an increase of properties coming to the market or coming back to the market at that level. And you're going to be competing with each other, and the prices are going to keep on going down. There's very, very little widespread data for this part of the market, and that's why this is such an interesting article. Rightmove's data shows that when properties are priced accurately at the start, they're more likely to find a buyer. Well, if they're priced accurately, they will find a buyer. But no matter how many times this is repeated, month in and month out, and to Rightmove's credit, they say this in their monthly statements, sellers choose to ignore this advice. Most sellers choose to ignore this advice. You do so at your own peril. I know what my house is worth. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't know what another buyer is going to pay for your house, and that's what it's worth. Doesn't matter how much you spent refurbishing it. Doesn't matter what you think. Doesn't matter what other properties are on the market for. You don't know what your house is worth, and if you're getting no viewings, you are priced too high, period. Full stop. And here's another agent. Like, all these agents are making the same mistake. And I will, in a moment, I will qualify this point of view with first line, front line activity with agents that I'm involved in. So the selling agent of this property, right, this lovely big house here that won't sell, that was originally valued at 4.5 million, then 3.5 million, is now at 3 million and still not selling. The agent says knocking £500,000 off the price wouldn't help, as it wasn't the reason the property wasn't moving. That is wrong. That is another example of an agent thinking that they're an economist and an agent who doesn't understand the market mechanics, doesn't understand the mathematics, doesn't understand market forces. This is absolutely wrong, terrible advice, and is not only going to cost the seller their sale, it's going to cost the agent their reputation and the income from that deal. This is an agent advising themselves out of a fee. And this goes on. Look at this. As of now, there's no point in looking when they're where they want to relocate to. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Businesses are really suffering, and that's the bottom line. Look at this. We know we'll have to negotiate, but I'm comfortable with the guide price. What? How? How? And we won't be lowering it. Well, then you won't be selling, Jevons. This absolute bloody-minded stubbornness, fingers in the ears, la, 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 we will not listen to the cold, hard evidence we're being smacked in the face with on a daily basis that our price is too high, la, 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 no, 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 no. Honestly, a year from now, these sellers are going to look back and they're going to go, oh my God, why didn't we just sell it while we could for what we could? Some of these houses will sit there rotting when the sellers can no longer afford to heat them. That's where this ends up. Some, not all, but some of these big houses are going to end up, they're going to move out because they can't afford to heat them and they're just going to start rotting. It happens. So one of the agents I'm working with in London, Carrington's, because they have fully taken on board this rule, which is no agent and no seller knows what a property will sell for. That is the golden rule I teach them. And it's the rule that's seen their revenues double in under 12 months. Excuse me. They are selling almost everything almost straight away. And most of it is above the £1 million mark. Okay. They are getting multiple offers on every single property, almost every single time, because they understand the golden rule, which is the market decides, not an agent's hubris about their valuing ability, not a seller's enthusiasm and overconfidence and over optimism. These are not valid factors in the valuing of a property. Okay, you don't know what your house is going to sell for. Your agent doesn't know what your house is going to sell for. Only the market decides. So you must bring your house to the market. Now, you are not obliged to accept the offers you get. So if the offers you get are not enough for you to move, then you don't move. But at least you have a decision to make at that point. I cannot stress this enough. Okay, you must lower your price to get people in the door, or you won't have a market for your property. Yeah, Patricia points out running costs are the reason why these properties won't sell at that price. Okay, and running costs, which for those large properties have become thousands of pounds a month. I mean, you're not like a property that size to heat it, council tax, maintain it. You are, with no exaggeration, you're talking about thousands of pounds a month just on running the house before you get to a mortgage payment or anything else. Thousands of pounds a month on a house like that. And people in that budget don't have that money at the moment. Baldrick's Turnip says, are these top end estate agents just greedy and happy for the big sale once in a while? Bit of an ego trip. Oh, I sold one for blah, blah, ka-ching. No, it's not that. I'm afraid it's just sheer blind dogma that as long as they get the listing, even if they have to overvalue, they just have to wait and it will sell itself. Okay. They are just mistaken, and a lot of them have not been in the market long enough to see a market like this before and don't know what to do. There are, thankfully, in almost all places, there are agents who do understand how the market works, who can see the writing on the wall. But at the moment, those agents, you imagine, right? Imagine an agent coming around to one of these example properties we've been talking about and saying to Mr. 4.5 million or £3 million house, I'm really sorry, but in this market, you need to just forget the price completely. You need to price it at what looks like an insanely cheap price to get people through the door. That's the only way you're going to sell this house. And the sellers are going, well, Savile said 4.5 million. They said 3.5 million. They said 3 million. You're saying what? 1 point what? Get out of my house. Get out of my house, right? So the actual competent agents who are telling the truth are being thrown out of people's houses as if they're incompetent. You just want a quick, cheap deal, don't you? Go, get out of my house. So sellers of these houses are punishing the only agents who are good and honest and competent and who understand that the market decides there are no exceptions. Right, guys, got to wrap it up. It's 9 o'clock. Thank you very much, all of you, for watching and being with me. Don't know what you guys are all doing 9 o'clock on a Friday morning watching my videos, but I love having you here. If you got my newsletter this morning, great. Any thoughts and feedback? I don't have a chance to reply to emails, but I do get to read them all. You can reply to the newsletter, and I will see your comments. If you haven't joined the mailing list, it's mhwc.co.uk/newsletter. If you are a new follower and you're wondering where to get my sort of entry-level advice for buyers and for sellers, in the description below, you'll see a link to my link tree, and it links to my top 10 golden rules for home sellers. Or just search, go to YouTube and just search Charlie's 10 golden rules for sellers, Charlie's 10 golden rules for buyers, and Charlie's 5 golden rules of offering. Start there. Make sure, if you're moving, if you're a buyer, the 3 Ps: be prepared, be persistent, and be patient. Start with being prepared. Get all your ducks in a row. This URL on the screen here. Prepared buyers have their offers accepted sooner than unprepared buyers. You need to have a mortgage in principle. You need to have a conveyancer lined up who's approved your source of funds. You need to be ready to buy your property search pack. And it's the same with prepared sellers. If you come to the market prepared, in other words, with the legals already done up front to sell your house, before you even choose your agent, conveyancer first if you're a seller. And if your conveyancer goes, no, give us a call back when you've got an offer accepted, that is a conveyancer that doesn't understand their job and the value that they can provide to their client customers. My conveyancers that I work with do get it. And as sellers are the ones having the tougher time at the moment, you are the guys who should be paying attention to this most of all. mhwc.co.uk/conveyancing. Pop your details in there if you're a seller. Talk to the conveyancers to get in touch with you. These are conveyancers who understand the value of bringing your house to the market contract ready and will help you. And they are the most reliable conveyancers I've ever known. Choose your own, right? Make sure you choose your own, but your choice of conveyancer is crucial. Your choice of agent is similarly crucial, because look at all these agents, right? Look at all these well-known household agents I've been talking about in this video who are giving terrible advice to their clients. An agent's job is not to value properties, right? That's not their job. You have to pay for a valuation, and if you're not paying for it, it's not a valuation. It is a guess, and that's why they all guess at such different amounts, right? And the point is, as a seller, riddle me this: what difference does it make what number you guess at? It's an irrelevant number. What do you think we'll get? What do you think we'll get? What do you think we'll get? You've got to stop asking that question. That is the question that leads you down the wrong road that all of these sellers have gone down. What do you think we'll get? You have to stop asking that question, and instead you have to ask this question. What, to the agent, right? What is it that you do that other agents don't that will bring competing buyers through my door? That's the only question. On that note, I'm going to wrap it up and wish you all a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.